Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. was not even close. Coming into this fight, whether you had Terence Crawford or Errol Spence Jr., I think everybody thought that this is going to be a close fight. All the odds makers practically had this fight a 50-50, with most having Crawford a slight favorite, though nonetheless, all the experts had this fight a close fight, but what we got was anything but. Terence Crawford lit up, dominated, and simply outclassed Errol Spence Jr., and Spence literally had no chance in this fight and practically lost every single round except the first. So in this breakdown, we're going to analyze the fight round by round and see what went so wrong for Errol Spence Jr. and what went so right for Terence Crawford. Starting with the first round, this round was very much a feeling out process with little output from either guy. Errol Spence Jr. immediately showed his game plan of moving forward and did so by using his jab in volume. For the most part, Terence Crawford waited and downloaded data, not punching much at all and sometimes throwing out that jab. Errol Spence Jr. at one point was able to push back Terence Crawford to the ropes in the middle of the round with a double jab and left hook to the body, but Terence Crawford immediately clinched. Nothing to note in this round other than this was probably the first and last round Errol Spence Jr. would look good in. Spence would open aggressive in the next round and land an overhand left, again set up with jabs, and seconds later would land again with the same combination to the body. But the whole time Terence Crawford kept his composure and kept reading Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford would find a 1-2, and I think this is where he realized he had the speed advantage in the middle of the round, especially with countering Spence's jab. Spence would come back with more of the same jab and left hook over the top. Though the momentum of this fight would completely shift from a close fight to absolute domination when Terence Crawford would find the counter early with a 2-1 in response to Errol Spence Jr.'s body jab and dropped Spence for the first time in his career. I think Terence Crawford was baiting out that jab as he threw a jab to the body first and anticipated Spence's jab to the body as he slightly stepped back, forcing Errol Spence Jr. to overreach and countered with the 2-1. And it's subtle, but seconds before this counter, you can see Terence Crawford see that 2-1 counter at around 36 seconds of the second round when Errol Spence went for that same jab to the body, and Terence Crawford was about to throw his 2-1 counter, but for whatever reason decided against it last second. I mean, rewatching this fight closely and seeing those type of moments just shows the insane ability for Terence Crawford to make reads like those and utilize those reads literally seconds later with an effective counter. Anyways, Terence Crawford would put on the pressure for the last seconds of this round, ending this round on a cliffhanger. In the third round, you could tell Errol Spence Jr. wanted it back as he came in aggressive into this round and initiated his usual body assault and pressure, which cornered Terence Crawford momentarily. Though Terence Crawford kept his composure despite the high pressure, and he would again find that 2-1 counter as Errol Spence Jr. went low, he would also find a really solid jab that lands flush on Errol Spence's head, and then would step back from an Errol Spence body hook and then come back with his own hook to the head. Going into round 4, Crawford would be the one starting relatively aggressive and being a little more offensive, especially with the jab. In the middle of the round, in the middle of the ring, Terence Crawford found a left hook and left uppercut that landed clean in the inside. Moments later, Crawford would land a huge left hand over the top that would really emphasize that he was on the offensive. And from here, Terence Crawford would tee off and land practically everything, and you could see the damage on Errol Spence Jr.'s face. Another jab would land at around 40 seconds of this fight, and what I noticed when watching this with hindsight is that Errol Spence Jr. just couldn't adjust. He kept walking forward with the same strategy, and Terence Crawford just picked him apart. Round 5 would start interestingly as the ringside doctor had to check in for Errol Spence Jr. and see whether or not he was okay to continue. And even though he was able to continue, he was clearly not okay as Terence Crawford continued to pour it on and stepped up on the pace with the offense early. And even when Terence Crawford was on the defensive, here in this sequence, he countered well with a right hook and transitioned into his own offense. Errol Spence Jr. would try to walk in again, no different, in the last minute of the round, but continued to get timed and lit up with straight punches. Errol Spence Jr. landed a solid left hand in the inside towards the end of the round, but it relatively did nothing as Terence Crawford took it and continued his offense. In the 6th round, Terence Crawford's confidence was almost at an all-time high as he came out aggressive, backing up Errol Spence Jr. and even stood his ground in the pocket, shoulder to shoulder, where Spence is normally punishing his opponents. In the middle of this round, Terence Crawford lands a huge jab that rocks the head back of Errol Spence Jr., and then moments later lands a beautifully timed left hand as Spence is coming in. And Terence Crawford would end this round with a series of jabs that seemed to hurt Errol Spence Jr. every time they landed. The beginning of the 7th was just a shootout for Terence Crawford, and in this round he really showcased what he's a master at: distance management. So let's take a look at this masterful sequence by Terence Crawford in the beginning of this round. First, he makes Errol Spence Jr. miss his lead hook. Then he parries Spence's jab, then moves out the way from the body hook. Then Terence Crawford jabs himself, not necessarily to land, but to bait something out. Spence takes the bait, and then Terence Crawford lands his left hand counter, pivots off, and lands another left hand. As Errol Spence tries to answer back, Terence Crawford lands a lead hook, and then Spence goes for a body jab, and like a knee-jerk reaction program at this point, Terence Crawford lands the same 2-1 counter he dropped Errol Spence Jr. with, and then backed him up with a series of straight punches. In this 15-ish second sequence, what we watched was the highest form of boxing imaginable. Everything was perfect to a T, with Terence Crawford hitting and not getting hit the entire time. Now we get into the middle of the round where for a split second it looked like Errol Spence Jr. had found something, landing 2 left hooks over the top, but on the ropes, Terence Crawford found the perfect right hand counter and dropped Errol Spence Jr. again. And the savage part, as shown from this angle, shows Terence Crawford walking up to Jermell Charlo and saying he's next. I mean, come on, this guy's on another fucking level. From here, Terence Crawford was looking for blood, throwing overhand lefts, and to top it all off, Terence Crawford at the end of this round would again drop Errol Spence Jr. with a double right hook in the pocket. Going into the 8th round, Crawford carefully was stalking Errol Spence Jr. and finally towards the end of the round landed a huge jab followed by 2 big right hooks that clearly rocked Errol Spence Jr. Then again, Terence Crawford would find another right hand and continue to land that jab. Going into round 9, it would start like the previous rounds with Terence Crawford coming forward and signaling the beginning of the end. Terence Crawford would land jab after jab after jab in the middle of this round until finally one would rock and back up Errol Spence Jr. Spence would desperately try to fire back but get punished by a right hook counter. And then again, Spence kept coming forward trying to find something, but Terence Crawford would finally land 2 more counter rights and then 1 more to close the show. So we finally get to the question, why was this fight not close? And I do think there's a pretty simple answer to this. And obviously this is with a lot of hindsight, but Terence Crawford stylistically is a matchup nightmare for Errol Spence Jr. Look, Errol Spence Jr. is fundamentally a master. He throws the jab perfect, he throws those hooks perfect, and he goes to the body consistently and pressures consistently. But this rather simple, fundamental, but linear game plan can easily get exposed by a master like Terence Crawford, who presents very weird angles, different movement, and overall just has a high IQ and a phenomenal ability to adjust on the fly. I think in summary, at the highest level, even if you have mastered the fundamentals, somebody at that level like Terence Crawford is going to pick that apart. So in my opinion, what's next for Terence Crawford is to fight Jermell Charlo. I know the fight wouldn't be close, but with the beef they have and that call out in the middle of this fight, I think that would be an incredible fight nonetheless. And for Errol Spence Jr., he should definitely be moving up to 154, and there's definitely some interesting fights for him there, and he will have the opportunity to win some belts. But what do you guys think? What's next for both fighters, and is Terence Crawford the pound for pound king? Thank you guys for watching and always supporting my videos. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.